Hello and welcome to what I hope is going to be a super quick video on how to write a perfect conclusion. As you can see, there are only 5 things a conclusion needs. I say only because it's slightly ironic because you might not know any. Um, but actually, if you remember these 5 steps, you will write a grade 9 conclusion. And of course, the last thing that you write in your essay will influence the examiner much more than the middle. So number 1, refer to the ideas at the time to which the text refers. So you have to have an element of context, well, if possible. Look to the future. This one is not if possible. This is essential. What will society be like in the author's opinion? So you need to write about society and you need to mention the author's name and the author's view. Finish with a quotation in your conclusion, which helps you explore this question or this view of the future. Use tentative language like perhaps, could, possibly, to present this point of view because we don't know if you're correct. And finally, remind us that this future is not a future for individual characters. So you're not asking what your character will do in the future, or at least not on its own, or how it affects individual readers, but for society as a whole. So if your character is affected in the future in this way, well, does that character represent something about society? If you as a reader are affected this way, are all readers supposed to be affected this way? In other words, does it affect the whole of society? Well, that's the abstract explanation. Let's jump in and see what it actually looks like. So this is the conclusion to an essay that got 30 out of 30 on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Don't worry if you're not studying that text because that's not why I'm using it. I'm using it because it has those 5 skills. Let's dive in. Another interesting point is that Darwin's book is called The Descent of Man, and descent means to go back downwards or regress. This perhaps implies that we as humans are acting too much on our own impulses. Thus, Hyde fits into London because London was very corrupt at the time and a lot of violence took place. Therefore, Stevenson implies we could all descend into people like Hyde. Well, let me just separate that last sentence for you so you can see what's going on. In this paragraph, the student is really giving us a really precise context of the time. So they've referenced another book, Charles Darwin's book here, which they've made relevant to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They've analysed that character, Hyde, with lots of tentative language like perhaps, uh, and they've broadened that out to say something about society. So here, society is represented by London, and it was corrupt and violent. Now, this next sentence then looks outward or to the future. So therefore, Stevenson implies we could, everybody, all of us, the whole of society, all descend into people like Hyde. So that on its own is a possible conclusion, but it doesn't meet all of my 5 criteria because the quotation in it is from a different text. It's not from our text. So we need a bit more. Let's see what she's done. Hyde is also a creation of God. Essentially, he is part of Jekyll, who was made in the image of God. Again, this is the context of the time. In existentialism, the second tenet states that existence precedes essence. So you don't have to delve into philosophy like this student has, but really what she's doing is now looking at our modern society, because existentialism didn't exist at the time that Jekyll and Hyde was written. Okay, so this is now a more modern interpretation. This means that we gain our morals by living, not through nature. Therefore, this implies that we behave in a certain way due to society. And you're going to see how often she uses this word because that's one of the rules of writing a conclusion. Without a functioning society, we would be ape-like. There's the quotation that she's focusing on. Like Hyde. Again, we, that's society. We all are the same in this view that she's presenting us. This is because Hyde hasn't been exposed to society for long. Therefore, he acts on his natural impulses. We feel sympathy for Jekyll because we all fight these impulses. So again, we all fight these impulses suggests that she's writing about society as a whole. Now, when we look at that conclusion, this sentence here, you might argue, would be better placed down at the bottom, down here, because that's her final view. But it's an exam essay. It's not perfect, and it's definitely still good enough to get full marks. How do I know? Well, because it did. So hopefully you can see exactly how to write a top conclusion. There are the requirements again. I probably should add a sixth. I wonder if you noticed the word sympathy. So the sixth one, try to anticipate it and then I'll write it. There you go. Did you get it? Refer back to the key word in the question, and the question was about how we feel sympathetic towards Jekyll, or how we don't feel sympathetic, and she's therefore included the word sympathy in her conclusion. So there you have it. 5 ways to write a perfect conclusion, and a 6th way, which is a bonus. Good luck with your essay writing, with your revision, and if you want more, don't forget to subscribe.